from Temporal Dingo, who says, dear insert meta reference here. Fun fact, back in the 1940s, the U.S. Air Force designed many cockpits based on the average height and weight of their pilots. They soon noticed an increase in accidents, at one point seeing 17 crashes occur in a single day. The Air Force then thought their planes were becoming too complex for the pilots, until an internal study of more than 4,000 pilots found that not a single one matched the dimensions of the cockpits in their gear. The Air Force is an example of lack of empathy in design, failed to take into consideration that the average design is not what you're looking for when creating games and gear for people who require a more tailored design. With that said, are there any examples you can think of where a lack of empathy in game design led to problems with software or hardware? Two come to mind.
The number one thing that I can think of is every single fucking game developer that read Psychology 101 and discovered what operant conditioning is and classical conditioning is said, hey, I can make players do what I want if I condition to do this thing, and then didn't read like the second page of that shit where if you condition people to certain behaviors, it makes them anxious, and it makes dogs bite their handlers. It makes them fucking freak out. And it's like, oh, psychologically manipulating people makes them into fucking assholes. I wonder why, like, these games, like League of Legends, create just the most toxic motherfucking assholes to ever exist.
Yeah, but
and yes, I know I said this already, but this is appropriate to the topic.
Step one, get them to do what you want. Okay, cool. Done. Never mind step two. What happens? I think lack of empathy in design shows up in hardware whenever the game forces you to do the claw. Whenever a game requires you to continue to manipulate the stick while pressing the D-pad, while continuing to press buttons on the other side of the controller as well.
Like, the left analog stick used the D-pad and the stick at the same time is a crime.
It's just like, if you want,
I say as I use it constantly in Elden Ring.
Exactly. And it's fucking that is not empathetic. That is cruel and unusual. Don't require claw moments in your games. Use layering, you know? I mean, we talked about this when we were originally discussing some of the stuff that Hitchhiker was doing with, like, when we were talking about how to layer DMC styles over buttons and have like basically a toggle that creates a layer on the controller. They're already kind of doing it with the D-pad, but the fact that you have to have these moments of clawing sucks. And the furthest version of that damage comes into play when you go to games like Kid Icarus Uprising, where the game requires you to play the stick on your left hand and stylus on your right hand. That's damage. Any game requiring that, plus like massive dexterous quick responsiveness, and you can only really clamp down the 3DS with your trigger finger, your R button, or your L button rather, like, fuck off. That's hostile.
Use your pinky to hold the weight of the 3DS. Yeah, it's only 400 grams, but guess what? Your pinky is not made for that.
Also, you're going to need a buff pinky with all the wrist damage you're going to take from the stylus.
I just thought of it, talking about the 3DS. Well, you talk about the 3DS. The #1 least empathetic design of all time. Hey, Woolie, I've got my phone right here. Let's say I was playing something on my phone. What would I do? I would put my index, middle, and ring fingers on the back of the phone and cradle it with my pinky and kind of push in on the sides with my palm. And thus I would use my thumbs and maybe the index fingers to do that. Oh, that's a good way to hold it. Unless you're playing a game on the Vita that has the use of that fucking stupid back touchpad. Where they want you to curl your fucking fingers on the corner like a freak.
I mean,
every time I fucking pick the thing up, I hit a goddamn button.
I get it that, like, we're trying to find a way to work more buttons onto the 14 button standard layout. And I felt the exact same when you get the Elite with the back nubs. Remember that? Right? You put in the back nubs, and I'm like, fuck this. I'm going to accidentally hit these buttons forever. I'm still currently struggling with the crouch button dismounting me from torrent when I don't want it to happen.
Oh yeah, I use the Elite controller back buttons all the time. I love it.
I grip the controller
but you can take them off, right? It's like it's fine.
Exactly. So the Elite became no problem because you took off those buttons.
Yeah.
I wish I could put fucking crouch on the touchpad somewhere, but unfortunately, it doesn't have that level of.
No, just don't mash the button.
Well, I know, but
relax.
The problem is that this is not the first game. This is a constant thing for the.
Relax.
Well, it's been years now.
Paige does the same thing. I look at her running around on torrent, and she goes to move the camera or move the character, and she clicks on the stick, and she dismounts from torrent. I'm like, just don't do it.
We all have different hands, man. Like my hands.
No, it's not your hand. It's your brain.
It's honestly like it's a thing that happens even when I'm not gripping that hard. It's just pushing the stick in certain directions. It goes a bit more hard than others sometimes, and perhaps don't
press the button.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's there.
I know what to tell you, and it's just don't press the button.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Look, I'll pick up this controller right now. Look, I got my hand. This is an audio podcast. Most of you, I'm spinning the control. Oh my god! Look, I'm not clicking it. Wow.
Yep.
Ooh.
Damn.
Great.
Wow. I should have tried that. I didn't think of not doing it. I should have tried just not doing it.
This reminds me of an interaction between some guy and one of the Doom Eternal developers when they added the LB button shoots the ice grenade in Doom Eternal, and somebody said, hey, is there a way to disable this? I don't want to use this. And they responded with, you are in control of the buttons that you push. Just don't push it. Just don't do it.
Yep. Okay. I feel like maybe somewhere in there, like making sure that I could consistently get a Guile super input out with the down back down forward down back up forward kind of thing requires a level of precision, accuracy, and force.
You don't need force. You just do it like this. Boop, boop, boop.
Yeah, but you're gonna find yourself dropping those more often if your inputs are not clean. And
yeah, well, force doesn't make clean inputs.
Well, it does help over the years. I mean, I've been doing this for quite a while, but regardless, a consistent issue I have is unintentional L3 clicks, and yeah, okay, cool. So by the way,
controller too hard.
No problem. No problem. So your entire series called Mind Goblins, just stop. Every single one of those things, just don't do them.
Okay, two things. One, yes, that is actually a theory. Like, unironically, literally, that is exactly what that series actually is.
Mm.
And two, this isn't a mental trap. This is just calm down. Don't hit the button.
Yeah, I've tried. I legitimately would just. I wish the touchpad, for all the space it takes up, would allow for more precise placement of usage.
It reminds me back when Paige was streaming Bloodborne a couple years ago, and when she beat Ludwig, she gripped the controller so hard she fucked up her wrists for 3 weeks.
Okay, well that is not what's happening.
Well, she's made out of paper. Remember, you have to remember she's made out of paper. So you might have been gripping at the same intensity, but your bones didn't just fly apart, right? But just instead of.
But it's not the grip so much. It's what's happening is the thumbstick is. It's when I'm pressing it in certain moments and I lean it back in one direction or I switch back to another. It's not like it's a whole.
You're literally fighting gaming it.
It's in that moment I'm switching directions to one to the other, and it clicks in when I switch directions. That's what's happening.
No, that is actually fighting game. Your earlier thing about the Guile super.
Yeah.
That is legitimately you using your D-pad muscle memory on that.
I mean, you definitely will result. You'll get more clean inputs. Well, the soft gesture, um, will help with certain kinds of inputs, but some inputs, like I feel you're rewarded for the harder like the stuff like pretzel motions and shit. You kind of just need to slam it aggressively for the accuracy. You
No
need to
matter how
trace
hard I slammed it, I was never able to do it twice in a row. That fucking
Yeah.
motion is the worst.
No, shit like that and shit like Guile, you need to kind of rely on the force of the edge of the limit of the input so that you always trace it, you know?
Hey, you want an absolute fucking opposite version of this? So I stopped streaming Elden Ring on Friday, and I was like, oh, I should do my fucking FF14 dailies. Okay, cool. So I start playing, just doing an EX roulette, and I fucking get to a boss, like in the first dungeon, and I fucking start sprinting towards him because I clicked R3 to lock onto him.
Yeah.
And then I went to jump and selected something because the jump buttons are different.
So, you know, I feel that like the touch surface is criminally underutilized, and I'll even say this too, as someone who has been getting used to playing the DualSense with fighting games, some games I play on stick, some games I play pad. When you're going to training mode and you're doing again sharp inputs on a dime, the ability for your thumb to hit the DualShock 4 touchpad was pretty low because it was, you know, smaller. But now that DualSense, my thumb by default is touching it, right? My thumbs are big enough that the tip of my thumb touches the pad automatically, normal.
Yeah.
So when I do a quick double quarter circle, I accidentally reset the training location, you know? So that the other thing I have to do is immediately turn the touchpad off and make it so that something else is reset training.
Let me ask you, when you're holding this,
Yeah.
for me, it's the crease of the first knuckle of the thumb that is on the edge of the controller, right? For you, where is it?
The joint of the thumb.
Okay, the same spot, but your thumb is like twice as long as mine.
It's very long, and it's also very hard and calloused from years of fighting game playing input. So when I rest the joint on the
and you rest in like a little curve, right?
In a little curve.
It's not straight out.
Yep, and it's usually right in the middle or just below of the D-pad, right? And it's
that touchpad shit actually seems way worse than the L3 thing.
Yeah, well, because the thing is, the beauty of that, right? And this is how I've trying to teach people like how to get quarter circles out if they're not playing on a stick, if they're playing on a D-pad, for example, is something like where you go, hold on a minute, are you trying to do a quarter circle using the top of your thumb and then tracing that out on the D-pad? That's why you're having a hard time.
You gotta use
the ball. If you use the joint, and then you simply twitch from down to forward, and the input's completed, right? And when you need to do it quickly, that's the fastest way. So that just becomes instinctual. But this touchpad increasing to be right outside the D-pad range means only in training mode, because in regular matches it doesn't do anything. But that's an option that needs to turn off right away. So
I'm just thinking of, like, do you remember me coming over and playing Xbox Third Strike, and you looked at me like I was a fucking freak because I was playing with the analog stick?
Yeah. You know, it's fucking weird.
Certain inputs are way easier with the analog stick on that 360.
Well, 720s, you know, there are pad players that would. There's a pad player named Bevangeef who just like dropped to the stick for that one move and then go back to the D-pad. It just made sense.
Easier.
You know. But that's it. Plus the controller itself, also the DualSense touchpad is actually more sensitive than the DualShock 4. You know, I've noticed that. Yeah. It's made to recognize like much lighter inputs as well. So all of this leads to some unintended inputs.